I made an automation that will write an entire book with one click. And while not perfect, it ended up being way better than I actually thought it would be. And certainly way better than most of us thought possible just a few months ago. Now, I get the occasional troll on this channel who comes and seems to think that all AI is you push a button and out pops a book, and it's not really the artist contributing. It's just the AI doing all the work. Those of us who've actually worked with AI know it's certainly not that case. You do need to put in quite a bit of work, and that AI written material absolutely can still be art because you still have to infuse a whole lot of human creativity into it to make it work. And AI is more of a productivity tool instead of a replacement tool like most people think it is. And yet now, I'm not so sure that that's going to continue to be the case forever. So to back up a little bit, a year ago, I created this sci-fi beach romance using nothing but prompts. It was an experiment I was doing to see if I could create anything even remotely usable without doing a whole lot of hands-on editing myself. So I created the outline with prompts, and then I didn't do anything to change the outline. Then I created specific beats for each scene using prompts, and then wrote those beats into different chapters, and this was the result. Even the book cover and everything except the text, which I believe I got using Adobe Photoshop, all of this was written with AI. And the result was not great. This book here, I have it printed out just for myself, but this is absolute garbage. There was absolutely nothing good about this. None of the chapters really meshed together very well. It was all horribly overdramatic and just really nauseating, and it was just not good at all. Plus, it took me maybe 3 to 5 hours to create this, even though I wasn't putting any human input into it. It still took me quite a bit to create because I had to run all of the prompts, I had to copy and paste everything, I had to create new prompts, etc. It actually did take me quite a bit of time, considering that there was no human input into this book at all. That was this one, Shoreline of Stars, from a year ago. So with this new project, I decided to do this again with another sci-fi beach romance called, by the AI, Where the Sand Whispers. And again, this has no human input in it whatsoever. This was entirely written by AI, but one of the differences, among many, is that this took about half an hour to produce rather than the 3 to 5 hours. And that's just with the AI running. In terms of the actual time that I spent on it, this took about 2 seconds, because all I had to do was push a button and it triggered a whole bunch of automations that went through and actually wrote this entire book. And the book is logically internally consistent with some caveats there. The prose is actually not too bad. This was written with 3.7 Sonnet. Claude 4 was not out when I made this, and it was done through a use of automations that required little to no oversight from me. The only human input that was involved with this at all was the actual creation of the prompts that got the whole thing going, which is what I contributed. In this case, agree with the trolls that say that you are not the author if you're creating books like this. As far as I'm concerned, I had zero input on this book. And so, yeah, I agree. I am not the author of this book. That's why I even went so far as to put the author name as artificial intelligence. And this is one of those rare instances where I would say you should probably disclose that AI wrote this, because it has nothing to do with my creativity at all. Now, why would I do this? Why would I create a book that is entirely AI generated and not have any human input at all? Well, in my specific case, I know that there are people out there trying to do this, to create systems like this that will actually work. I know publishers are working with AI, Hollywood studios are working with AI. It's a matter of time before tools like this exist to the mass populace, and ones that are actually decent. Do I think those tools are going to take off and really be useful in the long run? That's a separate question, and to make a long story short, I don't think so. But because I know other people are working on it, I wanted to make sure that I have a handle on what they're doing and that I can basically know what it is that those people are doing. I do not have any intention of making money with this book. I only published this on Amazon so I could get this paperback copy of it. It's only available in paperback. The ebook version will be available to my Story Hacker Silver group at no extra charge. That's a $7 fee to get into the group, but don't pay the $7 so you can get this. Pay the $7 so you can get everything else that you get with that group. It used to actually be free, but I found I was getting quite a bit of trolls and spammers because it was free. And even giving it just a small one-time fee of $7 seems to deter most of the people who aren't serious about it. And so by giving it that little bit of price, significantly increased the quality of the people coming in. So you can check that out if you're interested. No interest in making money. I also don't think that creating works like this with no human input is going to be capable of making money long term, right? It might have a kind of get rich quick possibility, especially once it gets really good. I don't think it's actually going to be that profitable of an idea. There's certainly way easier ways to make money than by using AI with no human input to create books and try to sell the books. So if you want to make money quickly, go find something else to do, start a YouTube channel. It's way easier. The real reason why I made this book is just to see if I could, to test the limits of my promptings, because also once I had that whole system in place, if I did want to use it with my own creativity, it actually saves me a whole bunch of time. So if I wanted to take a portion of that prompting process, to give you an idea, the way this works, and I'll show you the full automation in a second, but the way this works is I have it brainstorm ideas, turn that into an outline, turn the outline into individual scenes, and turn individual scenes into fully fleshed out chapters. And if I wanted to take a part of that, like say I already have an outline, and I want to use a part of that automation to turn that outline into a fully fleshed out manuscript so that I can go through and validate that manuscript and make sure it's consistent with my vision, well, then I could. And by starting with a system that will do the whole thing all at once, if I can get that working at a reasonably decent space, then I know that I can create a system that, when combined with my creativity, is 10 times more powerful than what it could be on its own or what I could be on my own. So combining the two creates a process that is really powerful for myself. So without further ado, let's actually get into the automation and see what it is that I built. And actually, we could possibly make it even better and just give you an idea of the process. I'm not going to give you all of the prompts right now. A lot of the prompts that I'm using and the sequences that I'm building, the automations that I'm building, will be available to my paid Story Hacker Gold group. There's a link down below if you want to get in on the wait list for that. It only opens up occasionally, but if you want to get in on that, you can do so. They're not available in there yet, but they will be soon. So let me go ahead and show you this process. Now, the tool I'm using to automate this whole thing is called make.com. And there are a lot of automation and agent tools out there, but this I have found to be the easiest, and therefore I think the most appropriate for authors. And so what I ended up doing, we have actually 4 automations here. This first one is to go from having nothing to creating the outline. And then once the outline is generated, it goes into a folder. And once that outline is in a folder, that action prompts these 3 to activate. So essentially, I push the button on this outliner, and then once this one's done, it triggers all 3 of these. I don't have to trigger them, they trigger automatically. And then once these are done, I have all 3 acts of the story, and I could just take that and format it and get a cover for it and make it look like this. Right? Let's go through the process and see how I built this. First, let's start with the outliner. So what I did is I had a prompt that started by creating log lines. And these log lines were in a style developed by Blake Snyder in the Save the Cat books, which you can definitely check out. But I have start this prompt, and I'm using OpenRouter as my tool of choice to create this prompt. I say, give me 20 log lines for a sci-fi beach romance story in the style recommended by Blake Snyder that includes the following elements. And then I give it all of the following elements. I also give it a system role of viewer and expert fiction author, creative writer, and story consultant. The model that I chose to use here, and I tested every step of this process with a multitude of models to find which one was doing that specific step best. Because one of the things you'll know about models these days, especially the more advanced models, is that each of them are slightly better at some things and slightly worse at others. So you really have to test every step of this automation with different models to see which one is giving you consistently the best results. So I chose Gemini 2.5 Pro for this particular step. Although if you're using OpenRouter as your step here, you can also put a fallback. So in case for some reason there's a problem with Gemini 2.5 Pro, it'll fall back onto Claude 3.7 Sonnet in this case. So it'll create this list of 20 log lines. Then it goes to the next step. All of these are in Open Router except for this last step here. Using this, it'll say, take the following log lines for a sci-fi beach romance novel and analyze them carefully. Following your analysis, select the one that you think is the strongest log line of the bunch, especially considering the romance genre. Reproduce the log line exactly in your response. Do not provide your analysis, any preamble, post log line analysis, etc. Just reproduce the log line itself. And then in these sort of made up XML tags that I've labeled as log lines, I pass on the content that was created in this step into this little thing. Now the XML tags here, this is a sort of standard prompting technique that's usually pretty effective. It's like creating a little box that lets the AI know this is where the log lines, and it kind of helps it be able to sort through data a little bit more efficiently. So I create the box with these XML tags. And then this little thing right here is just selecting content from the previous step. So whatever the output of this step is, it will be inserted into here. And the way you find that is right here on the side. So let's say I wanted to put something down here below. Here on the side, it will show me each of the steps that are prior to this step. So in this case, there's only one step prior, which is labeled create the log lines. That's this step here. So I can come in here, and to get the output that it's going to generate, I go here to choices, message, content, which is what I have here. Now, there are other things I could do here as well. Like say, for whatever reason, I wanted to pull in the name of the model that's being used. I could come up here to this, which just says model, and I could put that in here. Now, in the output, it will automatically show what model was used in this particular case. But in this case, we don't need that particular data. We want the output. So we put the output here, hit save. And from there, it's going to sort through those 20 log lines and pick the best one. I specifically chose Gemini 2.5 Pro here, but I could have used 3.7 Sonnet Thinking as well. This is the kind of task that I would definitely have any thinking model to do. I found all the thinking models did a pretty good job at selecting some of the best prompts from the list of log lines. In this case, I just went with 2.5 Pro again to select the best one. And then it reproduces that and says, and moves on to the next step, which says, okay, now that we've got this log line, which is the best out of the 20 that we saw, it's time to prepare all of the assets that we need to create an outline for the story. So this is not creating the outline yet. We're just starting to create a list of a whole bunch of assets like characters and locations and whatnot. This is just kind of basic brainstorming, right? So this is the outline prompt. So first I have it pull in the concept, which is the log line that is selected in step 2 here. And I say, given the above concept, I want you to generate preparatory materials to get ready to create an outline for this book. Here are some of the things you will need. So we have like list of characters, list of locations, an opening and closing image. I want to know what the main conflict is, what the climax of the story is, the theme, the love interest, etc., etc., etc. And then here I ask it to format it in a similar form with the XML tags. Then we go on to the title, where basically I say, here's all the stuff that we got from the concept and the outline prepped. Give me a title that's appropriate to this, just so we have something. And then we move on to the outline stage, where from the outline, I give it the concept that we established in an earlier step. I give it the title that we established in the previous step, and then I give it the outline prep material that we established in this step. And by the way, I'm doing this in a relatively simple way. You could easily spend more time preparing all of those materials that you need for your outline. I did it in one step, but you could easily do a series of writing things out and then having another AI look at it and validate it and see like what are the best ideas here and pull that all together. I did it in one step, but you could easily create a whole like loop of steps doing that. Just keep in mind that that would increase your prices, obviously, because you would be spending more for the AI credits, the tokens, I mean, to produce all of that material. But from here, I give it an outline template. Now, this outline template is not available to the public yet, but it will be soon. This is a step-by-step, chapter-by-chapter plot structure for romance. If you're familiar with my book, The Plot Module, which is a 40-chapter plot template, it's like that, but for romance specifically. And so I took that and I pasted it in here, the whole thing. So there's a lot of the prompt here. And then finally here, I have my instructions. Using the above concept, title, outline prepped, and outline template, generate a fully fleshed out outline for this book. The summary for each chapter should have specific details rather than vague allusions to what should happen. Write it as though you were going to hand it off to a ghostwriter to write the first draft. So that's the outline. It generates the outline. And now this one specifically, because I've tested this many times, I knew 3.7 Sonnet was going to be my go-to model because it does great jobs with outlining. As a side note, Claude 4 Sonnet also does a equally, maybe slightly better job with outlining. So far, I have not gotten Claude Opus 4 to give me as good of outlines yet. It does do very specific details. It's very inventive and creative, but often gets too sidetracked from what I'm actually asking for with Claude Opus 4. But 3.7 Sonnet is safe. Claude 4 Sonnet is safe, I think. Then I have a backup of 2.5 Pro. So once it's generated that outline, which can take a while, sometimes these outlines are, north of 10,000 words, I have it run through an outline analysis prompt. The gist of this is I give it the full outline here, again in this little XML box, right? Give it the full outline from the previous step, and I say carefully analyze the above outline to look for imperfections and ways to improve it. Here are a few things to look for. So we have like plot holes, convenient plot devices, underdeveloped character arcs, etc. Basically, I ask it to be a developmental editor and to look through the plot to see if it's good. From there, I have it rewrite the outline. So from this, it takes the original outline, which it got here. It takes the improvement plan, which was created here. And then I instruct it to, given the above original outline and improvement plan, rewrite the outline to incorporate the feedback given in the improvement plan. The end result is that I not only developed a full outline with AI, but I actually improved it without any human feedback whatsoever, using this system of creating the improvement plan and then rewriting it using that plan. It's important that these analyses are usually done with a thinking model because those do a better job of simulating human thinking, even though it's not actually human thinking, it's just kind of closer to it. And so usually the feedback that a thinking model gives when you're analyzing something is actually pretty decent. And so we can be reasonably assured that what we get out of this outline rewrite is better than what we got out of the original outline. So from there, here in make.com, we can have it run to the next step, which in this case is integrated with my Google Drive account, where I actually have it create a document. And the document includes the concept, the outline prep, and the full outline right here. It's also titled with the title of the book that we gave it right here. And I put it in a document or in a folder under Sci-Fi Beach Romance Books Outlines. And it's important to note that this folder right here, because we're coming back to this folder, Sci-Fi Beach Romance Books Outlines. So that's this whole process. Doesn't take that long, couple of minutes for it to run through this whole thing. And all I have to do is click this button here, it says run once, and it'll get started on that. But once it's created this Google Doc in that folder, we kick off the next 3 steps, and they all happen at the same time, and they're all pretty much the same, but with a couple of differences. So this is what it looks like. It's as you can see, a pretty long automation here, and the others look very similar to this. In fact, they're exactly the same, except for different chapters of the book. And if you give me a second, I can maybe make this look a little bit more presentable. All right, so I've shifted things around so that you can visualize this a little better. So the first thing is, at the very start, what this is doing is it is listening or watching, waiting for a document to be placed in this outline folder, the Sci-Fi Beach Romance Books outline folder. This is the same one that the previous step outputs a document into. So once it outputs that document into that folder, this thing will trigger and say, oh, there's a new document in this folder. It's time to trigger this automation. And from there, it gets the contents of that document, which is this step. So it'll come here and get the contents of that document. And it's important that we have that because we'll need it for these next steps. And then it runs through a process very similar to the validation process of the outline that we already saw, where first it will create a scene brief. I won't bore you with the details of the scene brief. In fact, this one that we have here, I've created much better ones now. This whole prompting sequence, I've actually greatly improved on it already since I created this initial automation. So I already know, like if I were to rewrite this book, do this again, I could actually probably create an even better version of this book than what I was able to do here. But the scene brief, it basically takes the contents of that Google Doc under a little XML box here called outline, and the instructions are given the above outline. Your task is to flesh out a scene brief for chapter 1. And by the way, the only thing different between like this chapter 1 scene brief and chapter 2 scene brief here is that this one says chapter 2. but the prompt is otherwise exactly the same. So it creates the scene brief. The scene brief includes everything it needs to know, including the actual plot of the scene, the characters that are in that scene and what they're feeling and what they're wearing and all of that, important details about the setting for that scene, etc. And then it goes into the next step, which is to write the first draft. So from here, it pulls in the output from the scene brief. So it's able to pull in what it got there. I also gave it a prose style sample. So I actually have a whole chapter listed right here inside of this prompt. It's a very long prompt. And then I have instructions. Your task is to write the entire chapter 1 based on the scene brief. Use the prose style example chapter to know what your prose style of your chapter should be. So I have it write a little bit more like me and my style. The chapter should be as long as it needs to be to properly flesh everything out. Pay special care to show deep point of view and showing, not telling, etc., etc. And I have a whole bunch of other instructions here about the style. Side note, I found that with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and this is also the case with Claude 4 Sonnet, if you ask it to give you a specific word count, the chances are that the quality of your prose will actually be worse. I have found that a lot of these more modern models do not need to be instructed to write to a certain word count. And if you do try to instruct it to write to a certain word count, it will actually get wordier in a way that's not actually good. So that it gets more flowery and stuff like that. And so I no longer, at least when I'm using these particular models, I no longer give it a word count because I find it can usually get a pretty decent prose and flesh out to at least over 1,000 words, 2,000, 3,000 words without me having to prompt it to get to a specific word count. And usually the prose is better as a result. As a caveat to that, I have found the opposite to be true with Claude 4 Opus, which just goes to show the importance of testing all of these models. We have our first draft. Then it goes to chapter 1 critique, where the same process where I give it the first draft of the chapter and give it some guidance on how to critique it to improve it. And then here we get the chapter 1 rewrite, where I give it the original chapter here, I give it the improvement plan here, and then give it instructions to rewrite the chapter using those improvements. And so what we get out of this chapter 1 rewrite, we can be reasonably assured is better than the original draft here. And then I just repeat that for each chapter. So each group of 4 that you see here is a separate chapter. There's 5 chapters in this draft. There's 5 chapters in this act. And by the time it gets to the end of these 5 chapters, it then puts the content of those 5 chapters into a Google Doc. Now you might be asking, why am I doing all of this in 5 chapter chunks? Because if we go over here, we see I also have Act 2 and Act 3. Those are also 5 chapters each. Why am I doing it in chunks like that rather than just doing it all in one automation? And the answer is just a small limit of the way Make.com works. This is the only limitation that I found to be a little bit troublesome or tiresome, I guess, is that you can't necessarily put everything into one prompt because sometimes it takes a while if you're going through this whole process of writing the scene brief, then writing the whole chapter, then writing an improvement plan, then rewriting the whole chapter. That all takes quite a bit of time. And Make actually has a time limit on how long its automations can go, and that time limit is 45 minutes. So if I were to string Act 1, 2, 3 all together, it would take more than 45 minutes to get through the whole thing. Actually, this is kind of has an advantage of improving the speed at which I do this, because remember, once it finishes the outliner stage of this automation, it triggers Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 to all go simultaneously. And so I'm actually able to finish the book faster because these are all going together. Now, you may be wondering about continuity. Like, if Act 3 and Act 1 are being generated at the same time, how does it know what's happening in Act 1? So there are 2 answers to this. The first part of this is that is actually the big problem. And the only issue that I ran into with this book is that there were slight continuity errors between chapters. For instance, there might be like that one chapter might end in a certain place and the next chapter would begin in a way that doesn't quite make sense giving the exact ending of the previous chapter. Like, there wouldn't be that flow from one chapter to another. That's not really a huge issue to me because that's something that's easily fixed by a human if you're reading through this. But also, not in this project, but in a similar project I was working on, I had 2 characters traveling over the course of a couple of days. And I didn't specify in that part, it was a fantasy book, I did not specify in the outline that whether they were traveling on horseback or on foot. And so about 50-50, the chapters that it generated, some they were on horseback and some they were on foot. And so that's the kind of thing that from a continuity standpoint, I have to be the continuity director and either make sure it's listed in the outline or go in there and fix it myself after the fact, which honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot of time. So those are the kind of small issues that I found with this. But in regards to the actual prose quality, this was actually pretty solid. The story was reasonably interesting. It's about a beach that is sentient. It has, like you can see, I actually used the book to create a prompt for the cover. So this cover is actually relevant to the content of this book. It has this like swirling plankton-like thing that actually plays matchmaker between people. Kind of a weird idea, but not necessarily the worst. Like in the hands of a good writer, you could do something with that. And all that really didn't quite work was just some of the small continuity issues, not the big continuity that it got, because it has a good outline. Remember, it's got an outline. The outline's been double checked by the AI and improved and removed of a lot of continuity issues in the outline itself. And so from there, it's actually able to create a broad outline that does a pretty good job of keeping things consistent between chapters. So the only issues I ran into were the smaller continuity issues, like what were they wearing in one scene to the next, you know, that sort of thing. And like I said, this is already pretty old prompting. I already have another sequence that I've put together that has greatly reduced some of those problems. And I'll make another video in the future showing what I've done for that. And spoiler alert, it uses Claude for Opus, which does a much better job at some things, not others, but some things. And I found it did a really good job. So if you like this video, I have another one that you should watch right here that has more information about writing with AI and everything you need to know. So go check that out, and I will see you in the next video.